Ladies and gentlemen, stop everything.
It's time for another DJ Elf 7 candidate interview.
What's going on? Pretty Day in the building. I'm over here with DJ Elf 7 in the building. Salute everyone.
Hey, what's up? DJ L7 here. As you know, I'm running something called the Unified Platform where I actually interview candidates all over the country. I've been doing this for several years. Now, to tell you the truth, right now, this candidate right here is very special because a lot of candidates who participate with this program are candidates who, a lot of them are first-timers. Some of them have run before, some of them have even won before, but it's pretty rare because usually part of leadership pressures people to not be involved with outside projects. They have their own media wrapped up. But this guy is someone who's actually run as an independent and won, someone who has actually been elected before, he knows the game. You know, someone who's politically astute and in a swing state, right? There's many reasons why his history, Brett's history of success in this field, of being a outsider candidate or being someone who's not establishment supported, really could be a possible blueprint for how the people, right, this unified platform's idea to get priorities back to the little people and start the large corporate organizations that dominate our politics. Somehow, as an outsider, you've been successful. So this is a very, very special episode right here, and actually one of the highest profile considering your past history in politics. I've had a candidate of the year 22 and 24, other candidates that I've celebrated, and I really appreciate it, but really your background and your level of success and your former having been elected, being the swing state, a lot of these things combine to make you actually, I believe.
You better stop there. My head is getting too big for the
most interesting candidate of this whole entire Unified Platform series for all the years that it's run. I'm very excited to meet this guy, and I'm sorry to blow him up so much, but
I'm just kidding. My mom always told me I was special too when I was growing up, so I'm used to it. So.
Yeah, well, this field is filled with people that believe they're special, but they have not achieved as much, right? So it's okay. Yeah,
I've only been at this since 1978, working for President Carter in Alaska. So that's. But my first campaign when I was 4, it was or 5. It was 1964 for Barry Goldwater. And then my dad was a big Republican in Oklahoma, and then I campaigned for Richard Nixon in 1968, and of course he had some problems in 1973. But it's not my first rodeo, so it's.
I appreciate that. So the first, to start off the interview, usually I ask all the candidates the exact same questions. I want to be as fair as possible. And then at the end, we go into little specifics about how we're going to work together, things like that. But once again, this is a very special interview. I'm just so excited to have him here. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And we'll see, hopefully we could do some more things together. So the first question is, tell me about yourself and why you're running for your position.
It's pretty simple. I've been in public service off and on since 1978, but this is about my grandchildren. My granddaughter, I have 2 grandkids that I know of, with my son, and my granddaughter started school 1st of September, and it's our local public school that near the house where we grew up with our kids. But then all these studies came out about how Wisconsin students are struggling. The extreme right wing has slashed public investment in our public schools. They took the worker rights away from our teachers. They took health care and retirement away from teachers, disrespected teachers and staff. So I said, well, I got one more run left in me, so we'll give it a go.
I saw that. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I know it's a lot of personal, sacrifice a lot of candidates do, and a lot of them do it for personally fulfilling reasons, and I really appreciate you for that. The next question is going to be, do you have a political ideology?
Can I finish up there? So the basic short answer to your question is, I'm running to make Wisconsin and America better for my grandkids, my family, and yours. So that's and I'm also pro motherhood and apple pie, in case anybody asks. So
when you really care about the future, right? You can't buy loyalty or integrity. You can't buy the future. Certain things have to be preserved. So I really appreciate that.
Well, and you got to build future doesn't happen progress doesn't happen by itself. It's the old saying, change is inevitable, but progress is optional. So it takes a lot of work and strategy and smarts to create a better future. So that's
I did look over your a little bit of your background, right? And I saw that in the back, like behind you right now, there's a picture of the environmentalist. I think that you said you did some environmental work. Also, education is a key focus of your campaign.
uh-huh.
And is there anything environmental and education? Those are your key. And also, what are you have a background in education, I believe.
Right. I was a public and private school teacher. I've taught everything from sixth grade math all the way up to college physics. And I have a master's in science education, geography, and zoology from the University of Oklahoma. I was teaching school at a small private school in Oklahoma, but also did my substitute taught and did my student teaching in public schools. But and teaching science in Oklahoma is hard because you're not sure whether the administration wants you to teach the Earth round or flat. So that was one of the things. But I enjoyed teaching, but I was making like $13,000 a year. I was teaching six subjects and coaching soccer and triathlons and taking kids on ski trips on top of it. So it was I couldn't really see a sustainable future in teaching there, but I then moved to work for the Sierra Club to create a tallgrass prairie park in Osage County, Oklahoma, up there. So that was and then that's how I got to Wisconsin. I came up as part of the liberal relocation program. They loaded all 4 liberals in a Volkswagen Bug. We traveled at night, stayed at Unitarian churches along the way. No, I'm just joking. I came up. I was trying to create a tallgrass prairie park in Oklahoma, and one of the key issues was who would manage the oil rights. And you may have heard of the movie and book Killer the Flower Moon. In the 20s, the Osage Indians were the wealthiest people in America, and in the movie, the Leo DiCaprio character marries an Osage woman, and Robert De Niro plays the Godfather. But the Osage women would get married on Friday, and then they would be dead in the ditch on a Sunday, because the white people would want to take their head rights, their oil rights. So it was a very delicate situation there managing the oil rights. But I hoped at some point to go back and create an Osage National Park to honor the way the Osage Indians were treated there, which was not well. So.
That's amazing. Yeah, I actually work with the indigenous guy from Green Party, Alaska right now. He's Inuit, so hopefully we can bring some more attention to those issues. There's been a lot of attention overseas when we don't really talk about what's going on here at home, and I really appreciate your focus on indigenous.
Yeah, I lived among the Inuit and the Eskimos when I was cross-country ski training for the Olympics, and a buddy of mine drove a 57 Ford pickup truck to Alaska. And I got a job in the Carter administration as an energy conservation advocate position with a state division of energy and power. It was a Vista funded job, but I was making $396 a month plus food stamps up there, and my rent was $150. So I was, bare bones, but I got to spend thousands traveling all over Alaska, living with the Inuit people all the way from Nome and Ketchikan down to the Tlinkits and Haidas, down by Ketchikan, Nome and Kotzebue in the northwest, to Ketchikan and Sitka in the southeast. So I traveled all over, and that was a great thing to do when I was 19 years old. I learned a lot about other cultures and people, and I want to create my Energy Conservation Corps will give young people or people of any age in Wisconsin a job going in, doing energy efficiency, reducing waste, creating good union paying jobs. And that's part of my plan for a better Wisconsin.
Okay. My next question is going to be, now sometimes people get to know these candidates because they represent a certain political ideology. So democratic socialism is kind of like, a hot buzzword. It's kind of like, there's also people who say that they are libertarians, right?
Right.
Different political ideologies. Do you have a way that you define your own political ideology?
Yeah, I was a Bernie Sanders delegate. I love Bernie. I was actually went to school in Middlebury, Vermont when he was on the I think he was on the city council or mayor of Burlington, and I respect his consistent message. He's been against the millionaires and the billionaires since I
Okay.
and but my basic political I grew up in Oklahoma. I was raised a Republican. I decided to become a Democrat. When the Democrats tried to kick me off the ballot when I ran for governor before, and in 2014 I got 51,300 votes and spent about $7,044, which my attorney tells me is the best dollar per vote performance in American history. But I haven't checked that. You got to double check what the attorneys say. But my basic political philosophy is straightforward. When you get in a car, a bus, or plane to go someplace, you want that vehicle to take you there. You want to move straight forward. You've got to be able to turn right and left as needed. You got to be able to stop and park and sometimes back up. But I define my philosophy as straightforward. And in Wisconsin, of course, we have a great progressive tradition. Aldo Leopold, the great conservationist, was a progressive. And that's the idea, is making progress to solve problems that face people right now. Being able to pay for your groceries, cutting your energy bills, being able to make your mortgage payment, affordable health care. All of these, I think, we can come up with practical solutions to make real progress.
Okay. One quick question is, some people put progressivism and conservatism at different ends of a scale. Maybe that's true for you, maybe it's not. Would you say that you also have, because it sounds like you also have some ties to Republicans as well, would you say you also have some progressive and conservative beliefs as well, or would you say that you're kind of like more in one camp than, it sounds like more progressive? Go ahead.
Yeah, my upbringing in Oklahoma in the '60s, when I was starting my campaigns, when I was 5 and 9 years old, the the Republicans were the Reform Party there. The Democrats were sort of entrenched. There was one story about how you had to have a Democratic Party card to get a state job there, which is sort of like China. So the Republicans were progressive there. I think obviously that has switched in modern times to the Democrats now the party of reform, and Republicans are about entrenched. The stuff that Trump and Vance are doing right now is very similar to the Trump stuff that the trusts were doing when Teddy Roosevelt was president and tried to break up the big monopolies. And now we have, Elon Musk and billionaires running the government.
I personally love that answer so much. To tell you the truth, I often give that answer myself because people say, I say there's a different strategy on a local, a state, and a national level. And the fact of the matter is that locally here, I'm actually a Republican because the thing is that here in New York, the Democrats have such control. Like you said before, it's like a little club, and the default, resistance group down here is the Republicans. But I do stand for trans rights. I do stand for, people that are living in the community that aren't necessarily legal by whatever. And the Republicans used to be that. So,
well, and obviously the new mayor, and taking on Cuomo, who's sort of, I actually worked with Cuomo on the Clinton campaign, and I'm excited about the new mayor. Let's just put it that way. My daughter, by the way, my daughter's acting in her first New York in-person play right now. It's the divine dating game, it's called. So if people want to go see a good play, she was Puck in Midsummer Night's Dream online last year, and then 2 years ago she directed a play written by a Wisconsin playwright. So she's following her theater dream, and I'm kind of getting over pneumonia, so I may not make it out there, but I look forward to seeing.
I want to meet up, definitely.
Yeah,
please.
for sure. So.
Okay, amazing. The next question is going to be, sometimes people, they'll like name an ideology, whatever, but then the thing is that you have different subsects of those ideologies. So, for example, right, you have your FDR, your New Deal Democrats, you have your Bernie Sanders, right, maybe more progressive wing. within the you did mention Bernie earlier, but within your political influence, you had so many people you've gotten to bounce off of, from Carter to, Nixon to the Clintons to Cuomo, right? All from the 70s to the present. Who have been your influences as in terms of now you're running for governor, right? And you could have influences for like other reasons like family, but I'm really talking about being a governor. What are your influences like running an executive position like you're running for?
Yeah, my degree's in political economy, political science, and economics from Middlebury College. So I've studied, both history, American history, all the way back to Greek history. But the people who influenced me working backwards are obviously Barack Obama. I worked with him on the Affordable Care Act. And as a small business I'm a carpenter and general contractor. I do real work. Not that typing on a computer is a real work, but I have to go, repair a AC unit that's getting dumped on by an ice dam today. That's where I got to go to work. And we're also remodeling a mold remediation on a house near here. So, but the Affordable Care Act saved my bacon as a small business person because it gave me both good health care for my kids and my family, and the credit helped lower the cost. Healthcare was my number one cost. So I respect President Obama, and Joe Biden did a lot of work on that, as did Dave Obey, who is one of our Wisconsin leaders, to pass that.
Sorry. If I could ask you a quick question about that, right? Before you said your specialties were education and environmentalism. So why did you get brought in to work on a healthcare act when, right? Like, how does that?
Okay.
Where's your qualification in terms of healthcare? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was a county and I was a state and county legislator for 16 years. So I was chair of the finance committee. I was also a leader of the National Association of Counties, the Democratic county commissioners. I served with Chris Coons there, who's now your great senator from Delaware. So I was involved at a higher level. And my father was a doctor. I grew up making house calls and hospital rounds with him before HIPAA, obviously, and so providing from a fundamental start place. The Declaration of Independence says that we have inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we can't do that without a healthcare system that both keeps us healthy and provides affordable medicine and treatment. Healthcare in this country is one of the top reasons for bankruptcies. And my Healthcare for All plan will address that.
That makes a lot of sense because, to tell you the truth, politically to make something like that pass, they need someone with political knowledge and connections and stuff like that. So to help, make sure that all the parties are involved and happy, they would need someone experienced negotiator like yourself, or a statesman. So that's a good answer right there. I appreciate that. Right? Because
and real quick, my Healthcare for All plan is pretty simple. You start with Medicaid. In Wisconsin, we call that Badger Care. You raise and open that pool. I'm on Medicare right now. I'm 66, so that provides the top end for people over 65. You have private insurance in the middle, and then we have a pool of government workers, as we've seen with the economy reports that just came out. When you lay off a bunch of workers, it hurts the economy. Our top employers in this country are local, state, and federal government, followed by Walmart. So people don't realize that. We in some ways are a socialist country, but you use those government pools to then give you, combined with your Medicare pool and Medicaid pools, to give you basically a national health service, which we actually have on the books. We can expand that, and we can get, right now our healthcare costs are about twice what Canada's are, and our health outcomes are the worst in the industrial world. So we can get closer to a Canadian system, working with the system we have, and provide affordable medicine. We do, large purchase pools like like the VA hospital system does. We'd bring the VA system in. So it's basically just, putting the puzzle of what we have together to provide better care for everybody for a lot less money.
All right, so back to the original question, asking about who your influences were. Maybe you said that you were largely influenced in your governance by Obama, or is that is that a major influence?
Well, like I said, let's work backwards. I was President Clinton and Vice President Gore's environmental and agriculture policy advisor in the war room in 1992. So I was the deputy political director. The highlight of that, by the way, I can send you a picture, was when I had to reach out to a certain singer, Willie Nelson. And, President Clinton famously said, "I did not inhale." Well, I got to go on Willie Nelson's bus, and I did inhale, and it was some good stuff. But I do want to legalize marijuana, but I think edibles should be managed under the Food and Drug Act, because it's a Wild West world out there. But but both him and Vice President Gore, I worked with them after I worked on the campaign. I was on the transition team. They offered me a job in Chicago, but right then I was sort of starting my family. So I, wanted to, Madison, Wisconsin, for me, I've lived all over the country, is the best place in the country to live. So it's got good schools, nice size. Traffic's getting bad, but it's not terrible. But it's a great place for me to raise my kids. I didn't want to raise kids, but this is where I wanted to do it. So I stayed here, but then the '93 floods happened, which was sort of floods of biblical proportions. So I worked with President Clinton, Vice President Gore, and FEMA head James Lee Witt. We moved about 12,000 homes and businesses out of floodplain areas. And I wrote a quote for Al Gore. The reason they call them floodplains is it's plain that they flood. So that saved a lot of taxpayer money after that. And I got an award from FEMA. I have a program I created called a Flood Stopper program that calculates the amount of wetlands you need to store a flood. Acre of wetland will store about 1 million gallons of flood water. So long answer, short question, but it's like President Clinton and Vice President Gore were real leaders on both good government and conservation and the environment and protecting people from disasters. And, all you got to see is what's going on in Washington State. There's climate derived disasters on a daily basis across the world. My skill set is I'm the master at disaster recovery anyway. So working backwards, obviously President Carter, I met him first in 1974. My dad was a conservation leader. He was a doctor, but he was also chairman of the National Wildlife Federation, Outdoor Life Conservationist of the Year. My mom and I helped produce our newspaper for the Oklahoma Wildlife Federation, so it was kind of family business. But President Carter, met him at a Wildlife Federation meeting at 74. I got a picture of him somewhere. I'm trying to find it. And then 76, he was my first Democratic candidate. I respect him. He and I both had an appointment to the Naval Academy. He went, I didn't, because I had to protect my family. But I obviously, when he had the courage to stand up to the American people in a sweater like this and say, folks, we got to deal with the energy crisis. You got to turn your thermostat down. It wasn't popular, but it was the kind of leadership that we need. And obviously, he did a lot of work with Habitat for Humanity. Habitat for Humanity is one of my clients. I fixed the leaky roofs on their buildings here in Wisconsin. They got these old buildings. So that's true. Obviously, working back from that, President Johnson, the Great Society, respect what he did there. I don't appreciate what he did in Vietnam. He did not learn from history there. President Kennedy, asked not what your country could do for you. And the Kennedy assassination is kind of my first thing that I remember. I was 4 years old and 63 when that happened. I just remember watching the TV and my mom crying.
So I
But
know you've
what?
been influenced by many previous presidents, but is there anybody who really? I mean, you named a bunch of them, right? But is there anybody that kind of like stands out more, or maybe not? Maybe you really pull from a variety of experiences.
What I try to do from history and from people. I mean, Will Rogers, the Oklahoma cowboy comedian, said he never met a person he didn't like. Well, I met a few people I didn't like, but I try to learn from each person what I can and find something to like in them. So it's a political answer, like
It's very
George, even
practical, though.
George,
I appreciate that. Yeah.
yeah, even George Bush Jr. It's like, I appreciate him driving around his ranch in a pickup truck. It's like he wasn't my favorite president, and apparently he's a pretty good artist. I haven't seen his artwork, but
We're definitely
my
going to dig into
watercolor
that. Yeah.
my watercolors are not so great. But his father, George Senior, I worked with him when I was at Sierra Club to sign the Clean Air Act, which is a major amendments, which is a major environmental law. And Nixon was probably one of the number one environmentalists. He signed more environmental laws than probably any other president. So you don't
Interesting.
hear
Yeah.
those.
All right. So the next question is, there's a lot of candidates who come to this series, right, with different levels of experience. I mean, obviously, in the elite class right here, but the thing is that one thing that can help people to really differentiate between the candidates, what are you most proud of accomplishing? Uh, and it could be a couple things. It doesn't have to be just one. But if there's,
Okay. Um, well, it started. After I was a conservation advocate in Alaska, I came back and went to school at Middlebury. I was training for the 1980 Olympics in cross country skiing, which is coming up right now. We have Jesse Diggins and Lindsey Vaughn, some great. I'm gonna go have breakfast tomorrow with Casey Fitzrandolph, who's one of our great speed skaters. So I've done 4 Ironman. I'm also, I'm an athlete, and I am the super heavyweight champion of the world in land sailing. So that's, I've got to defend my title in
what is
Wales.
land sailing?
Land sailing, if you think of it, so
Is it like a
everybody
boat
knows
with
the word.
wheels?
Yeah, it's like a I can send you a picture of it. It's like you think of a big wheel with a sail that goes 80 miles an hour. And we would typically do this. A year ago, I was doing it down at Cape May. We do it on low tide along the beach. But World Championships last year were on a dry lake bed out near Las Vegas. And you can kind of think of it as Mad Max meets Burning Man. It's like
Okay.
there's sailors from all over the world. A buddy of mine, Ron Westcott, he beat me in the North Americans by a point, and then I came back and beat him at the Worlds. But
This is
and
a
I'm
fascinating
come
story, yeah. But once we're really talking about your political stuff, right? And this is, by the way, it is fascinating. We will dig into that later.
right.
But what, in terms of your accomplishments politically, right?
Okay,
And
yeah,
you've been
I'll get back to that. The
also
Olympic
one thing.
stuff.
Just you might not mention this, but the fact of the matter is that at one point you have an incredible background of accomplishment and connections. You also spend a long time in the county and state legislator, but then the party turned its back on you, and you still won as an independent. That, like, to overcome that seems amazing. So that,
Well,
right, just personally for my other candidates that are watching this, I bet they're super interested in that. But you could keep talking about the other things that you were proud of accomplishing.
yeah,
To me,
yeah,
to fight through that is amazing. I
yeah.
want to know. Go ahead.
But so my first national bill that I passed was went back to Washington in 1980 and worked on the Alaska ANILCA, it's called Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act, and that is the largest park and refuge and hunting expansion in the history of the world. It's over 100 million acres of new parkland in Alaska. I worked with President Carter, the people in the Alaska Coalition. I was an advocate with the Audubon Society. That's where I was housed. But I also worked because my dad's leadership in the Wildlife Federation a lot to bring hunters into that community. And one of the things that made that effort successful was in addition to creating national parks where you typically can't hunt, in Alaska we created national preserves, which was a highly protected area where you can hunt. And growing up, I got my first gun when I was 6 years old, my first fishing pole when I was four. So I've hunted and fished my whole life. So, but being able to, um, bridge that gap between environmentalists and conservationists was helpful. And having me there, especially my dad being chairman of the National Wildlife Federation, it helped get that bill passed. So that was a big effort. Um, Other accomplishments, obviously, the Clean Air Act amendments that we passed under President Bush the first. I was a Sierra Club advocate there. Worked with my colleagues at the Clean Air Coalition to pass that, and for the first time, we were able to address toxic air pollution, which is the air pollution that comes out of steel mills, uh, and steel mills, other big polluters that cause direct cancer clusters, refineries around them. There's huge, typically large cancer clusters, often with people of low income, both people of color and white people of low income. So those were two big things. Obviously, as I mentioned, under President Clinton and Vice President Gore, working to move 12,000 homes and businesses out of harm's way after the 93 floods. We also in 93 had an outbreak of cryptosporidium, which is a deadly parasite in the drinking water in Milwaukee. That killed over 50 people and sickened about half of the city, about 400,000. And I was head of the Sierra Club Great Lakes program then. What I do when I have an issue, I knew about Giardia because of my time both being a cowboy and camping and hiking in the
Giardia
West.
is another water contaminant. That's a biological,
Right.
right? But that's a germ. Okay.
Yeah. But cryptosporidium is actually worse. It's like you think of it as a little golf ball, the egg or oocyst. It gets in the water, and people who were immune compromised, cancer victims, AIDS people were just getting wiped out by it, and they were literally dying of dysentery. And so I worked with the mayor of Milwaukee, Mayor Norquist, his wife Susan Mudd, and others to come up with both standards for this, because EPA didn't even have standards for this, and get those standards in place to keep that from happening. I wrote a report called Danger on Tap about that this was a more widespread problem in just Milwaukee, because drinking water is a fundamental right. If you don't have drinking water, you're, pardon the expression, screwed. And I was a clean water champion. Men's Fitness magazine recognized me as a clean water champion. In addition to the fact that I do triathlons, so I'm more than just drinking the water. I'm swimming in it on a pretty regular basis.
Actually, I have some work up in Newburgh. There's PFAS in the water. I know people that have cancer. Their kids have cancer from the water,
Right.
from the pollution in the water. So I really appreciate all the people whose lives you've actually impacted over that time by helping to clean that up. So,
Yeah, and
there's some people
PFAS,
benefiting from that work.
it's the current forever chemical. I worked a lot on PCBs and dioxin, cleaning up the Fox River in Wisconsin. That was $1 billion cleanup plan that I helped. I was part of a team with local conservationists, Penny Shaver and the Sierra Club, and the paper companies and the Wisconsin DNR and EPA to get that done. My job as head of the Great Lakes program for the Sierra Club was cleaning up the worst toxic sites. We cleaned up Indiana Harbor, which is 15 feet of industrial goo. We dredged that up and then used that to cap it on top of a refinery. So we sort of cleaned up two sites with one project. Waukegan Harbor, there are about 40 areas of concern. We call them the Great Lakes: Buffalo, Cleveland, Toledo, Detroit, you know, all these. But I was working on the contaminated goo or sediments at the bottom is the linchpin issue. But yeah, PFAS, I started a Protect Our Families from Cancer project I wrote a report called one thing I learned in college at Middlebury is, you gotta you gotta research and present your case. I wrote a report, Cancer Chemicals and You, that talked about these cancer clusters around refineries, Kodak and Rochester, all this stuff. And but yeah, PFAS is the thing we need to focus on next too. So
I really appreciate that so much. So the next question, and you've kind of like answered this already, but I do just so you know, all the questions are the same for this series because I want to be fair. I don't want to accused of change. So the next question is,
you want to protect the innocent. I appreciate it.
So what are your areas of expertise, and why is it important for your why is it needed for your constituents?
One of the things, and you probably are starting to figure this out, is I got a little bit of experience. It's like
Absolutely,
and,
that's amazing.
and as Ronald
Top
Reagan
tier
said,
experience.
well, as Ronald Reagan said, I'm not going to let the youth and inexperience of my opponents become an issue this campaign. But it's kind of obvious, it's like so. But and all the people running, I think there's 8 or 9 of us now running for this open Democratic governor's seat, and they're all good people. But one of the things I bring is just a breadth of experience and an ability. One thing good about being from Oklahoma is, you can. Oklahoma is sort of at the bottom of the heap. It was the last piece of land stolen from the Native Americans. Actually, we call them natives because America is named after Amerigo Vespucci, who was a lost Italian sailor. So, the Gulf of America should be really called the Gulf of Lost White Guys. But the native peoples there, and I'm part Native American, but it's like we, Oklahoma's at the bottom of the heap. We look up on everybody. So, but I grew up working on our farms. We had farms that were like 60 miles from the nearest hardware store. And my basic philosophy is fix the problem that you got with the stuff you got, and that kind of, that's served me well. So both in government and construction and so
a practical approach. I appreciate that. Yeah. All right. Cool. So I'm going to head to actually the policy questions now. Right. The first half of the interview is like learning about yourself as a candidate. The second one is asked about your policies.
So this is the hard part. Is that it?
Well, I asked about my I actually work with a lot of partners, political partners. As you know, in a republic or a democracy, we need coalition as minorities to get our stuff done. So I'm going to ask about all their issues first.
Well, let her rip. So.
Okay. So the first question is, when we look at Israel-Palestine, there's many areas, other areas of conflict in the, in the world, such as Korea. Right, I'm Korean American. What is your vision for peace in the face of foreign and domestic interference with our, you can see that IPAC donates a lot of money, and I'm not saying that I'm not for anti-Semitism at all, but there are like China actually, the spy got busted Linda's son inside of the New York State government. What is your plans to and there are some governors, right? There's a controversy about Newsom doing business with the Chinese government. What is your vision for peace in the face of foreign and domestic interference?
Well, first of all, our hearts and prayers go out to the folks at Bondi Beach. I actually took my wife on our honeymoon down there. It's a beautiful beach and beautiful setting, and no person should be killed because of their religion. That's the ultimate and worst form of racism. I was at the menorah lighting the other night with our governor and sheriff and police chief and you have to be. We had security guards there, but you're just on a high, but the thing to remember about politics is I taught college and high school physics, and one of Newton's laws is for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And we have to understand that Netanyahu's activities in killing 60,000 people in Gaza, and yes, the October massacre was horrible, But in the Old Testament, I was raised Methodist, and we read the Bible a lot. It said an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. It talks about proportional justice, and the response, I believe, of Netanyahu and his far right extreme government is beyond that. The main and going back to fundamental values that Judaism, the Jewish faith and Islam and Christianity are all Abrahamic religions. We all started at the same place. And the fundamental value of that is thou shalt not kill. And, you just have to ask yourself, I don't know how Netanyahu atones for his sins, killing all those innocent women and children and demolishing, Gaza. So the other problem I have directly is that was done with U.S. weapons. That was done with $60 billion of aid and military aid we give Israel. So their blood is on our hands. And we have to be much more assertive on how our hard-earned tax. I want to spend, I want my money back. I want the U.S. taxpayers' money back. I want to spend that money on women, infants, and children. I want to spend it on health care for all in America. I don't want our dollars to be going to kill innocent women and children in foreign lands. And yeah, I know AIPAC's strong, but it's like, come after me, make my day.
Yeah.
It's like, but the other thing I find hard to believe, having studied intelligence agencies, is that Mossad didn't know that was coming right before the presidential election. And I believe Netanyahu was working with Trump to try to ensure his victory, because my father taught me there are no coincidences in politics. And I believe Netanyahu and Trump are working hand in hand for evil purposes.
Customato, also the trainer for what's his name, for Mike Tyson, also said that, right? What they intended to happen is what happened, right? So
yeah. There are no coincidences in politics. Do you know who was managing, back to President Carter, who was managing the rescue effort of the Iranian hostages for President Carter?
No.
It was a guy named Oliver North, who later then became and ran the Iran-Contra. They were running guns to the Contras. My brother was a Marine Corps Amtrak driver, running for the Rapid Deployment Force, running those guns. And his Amtrak, which is like a personnel carrier for the Marines, was hit by a Soviet Sadar missile. And fortunately, he was strapped in, but he's still disabled. So it's, that there are no coincidences in politics. There's always, you always got to find the link.
There's too much at stake for things to be allowed to just go wherever they want. So I understand that. I really appreciate your answer there. Next question is, during the Obama era, actually an activist who goes back, I've been active for about 25, 30 years now. They actually agreed to end public housing as we know it with something called RAD Pact. Now, the thing is that the way that people were convinced to support this, and I myself did support it, right, because the people who are living in public housing were promised those homes. But unfortunately, it's become something else. But the United States will be one of the few countries in the world left without a public housing program. And we know that public housing also supports our most vulnerable people, that are elderly, people with disabilities, sometimes veterans. Would you support public housing or return to public housing for the United States?
I actually have 4 homeless people living in my house right now. So I've been an affordable housing provider for about 9 years. I've started with a blind disabled lady and her caregiver for the first property I bought. So and that was an 1849 farmhouse. It's 1 year younger than the state of Wisconsin. It took me 3 years to get it up to code. So I have I'm an affordable housing provider myself. And I challenge, when I ran before, I hired homeless people to run my campaign. I'm going to do the same thing this time. I'm doing the same thing this time, but I'm also providing them homes, job training, food, clothing,
Amazing.
because
Yeah.
as Jesus said, as you do to the least of me, you do unto me. So, so that United Way estimates there's 28 vacant houses for every homeless person in America. And one of the problems with large housing projects, I don't know. I'm sure it's, the urban renewal movement of the 60s tore down a bunch of, you know, decent working neighborhoods. And in Chicago, which I'm most familiar with, rebuilt those with, Cabrini Green, Robert Taylor homes, which just turned into absolute disasters.
You're absolutely
And
right, and that's why we need people with experience like yourself. Honestly, I'm turning to a Brett Hulsey disciple over here, but people with experience, because the thing is that a lot of people who are well-meaning have overly simplistic ideas about how to solve these problems with no experience or actual. That's why it's good to have people that are homeless working with you directly, people that have experienced the system and see how even good intentions can hurt them. And I can tell you a lot about those things. Just so you know, I'm currently homeless now, but I'm actually having incredible. But you're actually in the top tier once again. So I really appreciate your work, and I really appreciate the way that you're actually hands-on with working with poor people in the community versus just talking about it. That's huge.
Well, and so here's the plan. I haven't looked at the housing stock in New York much. Obviously, Madison is more expensive than other places. But what these 28 abandoned houses, I have money to go buy them. I'm looking at my next one, either trying to figure out a rental. And so let's just start with one homeless population, veterans. About 1 out of 6, 1 out of 5 homeless people are veterans. There's no reason that a homeless vet should be on the street. So the VA will pay me $700 a month to house a veteran. In this house I'm sitting in, I have one veteran right now, but if I had 4 veterans, I would be getting $2,800 a month. If I rented out this 2 bedroom, 900 square foot in Madison, I would be getting $1,800 a month. So what I want to do is create a model for other landlords and property owners to house homeless people. The nice thing about the veterans is that in the homeless community, they're smarter than your average bear. They're
Yeah.
pre-screened by the VA. They're supported by local agencies like Porchlight here. So because homeless people and Americans do have drug and alcohol issues, Wisconsin, we print T-shirts that say "Drink Wisconsinably," because it's alcohol
Yeah.
is the drug of choice among
I've seen
most
it both ways.
Americans.
I've also seen the homeless community really used to propagate huge, salaries for unright qualified people. So there's a lot of
Yeah,
victimization that happens as well. But I like the things that you're talking about, and the numbers that you're talking about are very low compared to the money that's spent on the homeless. Here in New
right.
York City, guess how much money is spent on the homeless per year? About almost $4 billion, and a
Yeah,
lot of the money goes towards exorbitant executive salaries. But when you're talking about like $1,800, that's not really that exorbitant at all. So
yeah. And I
yeah,
am, I'm one of the things I try to do is Occam's razor. Occam was a English philosopher, but it's like the simplest solution to the problem is often the best. And
yeah,
honestly, as we saw with the government shutdown, government is slow, inefficient, and unreliable. And I was feeding homeless people, veterans, because they couldn't get their food stamps. So I was, you know, and while government was shutting down, they were squabbling in Washington. It's like, I don't
yeah.
right now. Right now, the federal government can't even do its fundamental constitutional duty, which is pass a budget and pay its debts. And so
Yeah.
but so back to my model. So I bring these people in, I give them job training. We're getting ready to go do this molder mediation with one of my homeless people, Jess. She's my painter. I do most of
Okay.
the drywall, sir. Liam may help us with the drywall. but I can get them in apprentice programs, and I'm trying to get them, apprentice programs, the unions, they have 9 retirements for every one new union member in my plumbing. So if we get them in the test, they can make $20 to $30 an hour learning a trade. And a lot of them have good skills. It's like they just had some bad luck, and but by the grace of God go I. So we get them, and getting them integrated into housing gets them reintegrated in the community. When you warehouse them, they don't have, these people take care of the house we're living in. It's not great, but they're fixing it up. And, once I get this one stabilized, I go into the next one. So,
Yeah.
and it requires no government. And I'm a small business person. I run an award-winning small business. I've been in business 20 years, started my own business in a basement with a TV tray, a laptop, and $100. I move at this speed. I'm like an X-wing fighter, and government is sometimes more like the Death Star, as far as speed goes.
Here in New York, just the New York City Public Housing Authority had the largest federal bust for corruption in United States Department of Justice history. Went down in New York City Public Housing, and just having been homeless myself several times, I found that a lot of times people that were affiliated with religions and stuff like that were more. They would give out the food more because they believed in it, but sometimes the government workers, when it was just a job, there was the corruption could seep in and this kind of thing. Yeah. So I appreciate more hands-on with it. And
I spoke to a homeless conference about a month ago, and I can email you the press release. I mean, my goal is zero homelessness in America, zero hunger by 2030.
So just to zone in back from my partners, I'm sorry, but would you support restoration of public housing?
One problem I have with this is, so right now in Madison downtown, there's enough vacant state office space that we could convert that, and after Katrina and after these natural disasters, I worked with FEMA and President Clinton, Vice President Goron. We would convert, a gym into room for 100 or 200 homeless people after disasters. Well, our homeless crisis in America is a disaster, and I think we need, my goal here last week has been to get every homeless person off the street before it's 20 below zero outside. And if they would, there's several people I couldn't get off the street, but I gave them sleeping bags. I gave them garbage bags to wrap themselves in. I gave them food, gave them hot cocoa. You just give. There's some people you can't get off the street, but we were able to get virtually all of the homeless people off the street before the killer freezing hit. So, and the problem I have with the homeless industrial complex is it's not efficient. I can, for instance, a classic example, people are donating all this food to homeless people. As you know, a lot of homeless people don't have teeth. They can't eat, so I go around to Quick Trip, which is our award-winning convenience store here, and I get donuts at the end of the night, because right now these people need something that's soft and gives them energy. So I go give them, I hand out these donuts. So it's like, but there's a lot we can do with existing agencies, obviously Catholic and all the religious charities, and others are doing a lot. St. Vincent de Paul is big here, but there's a lot with those agencies that just need coordination more than I think it's more as a community organizer, it's more of a community organizing problem. I think there are enough resources there if we spend them properly. So
that makes sense to me. I appreciate that. As someone who's myself involved with this particular fight, I know some people might have some feelings about the answer, but I prefer this kind of an answer and a more thoughtful approach rather than just someone who's agreeing to a slogan. Okay, because slogans are often twisted against the community that they're meant to assist. So a more well thought out answer is much more, and experienced answer is much more deeply appreciated.
Well, and I've been working with homeless people since I was in Viston, Alaska, too. So, but the one thing that reminded me, I was at church. I go to St. Luke's Lutheran Church. I sing in the choir. They want me to sing solo. Nobody can hear it, but the nativity scene at church yesterday or Sunday was about, realizing that Jesus was homeless. That's why he was born in the manger. It's like they were traveling. There was no room at the inn, and the kids did a great, they did a great pageant on it. But Jesus, for most of his life, from what we know, was basically a homeless wanderer. So.
I am Christian, but I do have to admit that I am actually technically homeless by choice because I could get a regular job, right, and do the stuff. But the things that I fight for, such as the inclusion of people who are war victims, such as fighting for other homeless people and stuff like that. There's a lot of people in the homeless, and I'm not the homeless. I'm saying the not-for-profit industrial complex and other people that are often associated with academia and stuff like that who push the actual poor people out of the way.
Right.
Because I'm so committed to that fight. I refuse to work in any other field than this field. So
no, it's very gratifying as you know, when you help a homeless person. I can send you videos of the ones I got the food from my St. Luke's church and give it to homeless people down the street. That we had some chili left over. Unfortunately, I didn't keep it warm for them. I got to work on that. But
I wish they voted because I work with that community and they have a crappy voting come through, and a lot of times you end up helping them and they don't help you back that much, but it is what it is, right? But
I've just never seen, there's nobody more grateful than a hungry person you give a meal to. So
that's true too. They could be very good workers, committed workers. Absolutely. Okay, the next group that I work with is actually the trans community. Now the thing is that, I actually am Republican. I stand with, but back to the thing, a lot of times they face discrimination, and instead of talking about the job discrimination or the housing discrimination, somehow it became about bathrooms or something.
Right.
Was a losing fight in the first place. So
which obviously is not the top problem we face in America today. So
yeah, it's the top problem for some people, but not for others. Like some people want to make it there, which is So how we assure this group fair access to services?
Well, let's start, more broadly. My mom is a gay school teacher. She's gay, but she was a public school teacher in Oklahoma for over 40 years. And so now she and her partner, Chris, and oh, by the way, the only thing better than having one mother is having two mothers. My other mother, Chris, she can help me with my auto mechanic needs as well. My mom, Marion, is more of a cook, but growing up with a gay mom since I was 20 years after she divorced my father, she came out, is taught me many of the trials and tribulations that somebody who doesn't have fit the Ozzie and Harriet model of the American family faces, especially in a place like Oklahoma. So, but she's like teacher of the year. She taught at International Baccalaureate High School. She English and drama teacher, and but so the relationship that obviously we're moving forward on gay rights. I worry about people being attacked anywhere for their sexual orientation, and you just kind of come down to the fundamental question: is what part of love thy neighbor do these people not understand? This is a very clear mandate from Jesus. They claim to be Christians, and and as I got in trouble for saying it the other day, but at a Democratic Party meeting, but I would add to that is mind your own fucking business. People need to take care of their own stuff and not worry about who's going to bathrooms where. It's like there can be, when I was at going up to a Packer game, and pulled over, and the women were lined up outside of the women's bathroom. There needs to be more bathrooms for more people, and you can put single private stalls so that people can go into a bathroom and, no matter what their orientation is. But obviously women deserve, it takes them a little more time in the restroom than men do. But, I'm all for more bathrooms and make them secure, and let whatever gender people walk. I put in bathrooms for a living.
If I could give you a hypothetical, because honestly, the bathroom thing I think is, a separate issue. But the thing is that, let me give you an example here about housing, right? Let's suppose that, and this is just, I'm making up these numbers here, just so you know, but it helps me to understand how you develop solutions. So let's suppose that 10% of the people applying for public housing are trans.
Mm-hmm.
We do a little study, and we find that only 1% of the people who are actually in the public housing are trans.
Right.
So we go to the trans people and we say, in public housing, we say, why do you think this discrepancy here? They say we're getting beat up, right? We're getting violated, all this stuff. So what they may, while there's no law saying that you can legally discriminate against trans people, right? They are still facing this type of discrimination, and it makes them. So the solution is complicated, right? Because if we say, let's take all the trans people and put them in one building, that's ghettoization, right? We can't take all the
right.
and put them in one neighborhood. Or if we say quotas, right? They're incredibly unpopular quotas. If we say we're going to bring up the number of trans people to 10%. So how do you develop a solution to, right? Once again, there's laws protecting people, but they're not being followed, or they're not being really. How are you going to help these people?
It's called enforcing the Fair Housing Act. It's like, we have laws on the books on many of these challenges that just need to be enforced. And, we need to work with the trans community to, enforce those laws. I mean, we need to hear that when they're being discriminated against. If elected governor, I'm going to increase money for enforcement for fair housing for everybody. I mean, African Americans, Native Americans, homeless people.
Appreciate that.
There's a lot of people that are being discriminated against in the housing market. And again, as a landlord who has homeless people living in their house, these people couldn't rent other places because they were living in their car. They didn't have permanent addresses. They didn't have working phones. They didn't have, credit history. They had evictions. So I
appreciate that.
I've seen this up front, but the fundamental thing we can do as government leaders is enforce the law. The Fair Housing Act is a good start. And let's see how far we get with that. And if we need more, language, we can do it. But I think just enforcing the laws we have is a good start.
3 more partner organizations that I work with. Thank you for your patience in this. Then we'll get on to other stuff. But the next community that I work with is the wrongfully incarcerated. Now the thing is that I even have people who have letters from the Conviction Integrity Unit of the District Attorney's Office saying that the evidence used against them was faulty. They have still not been exonerated to this day.
Right.
Would you support people that? So the thing is that people that have been provably wrongfully incarcerated in some states, right? Now Republicans will kill you, right? The death penalty is, it's not something I personally support, but it is unfortunate that they will kill you. But they also have the best in Texas, right, which is Republican run. They also have the best exoneration rates, and the best so far on paper. I think it's kind of low, but the best compensation for people that have been wrongfully incarcerated.
Mm-hmm.
Would you support for people that have been wrongfully incarcerated? I think the Texas model is the best one at $50,000 per year or more, right? But would you support at least compensation for people that have been wrongfully incarcerated? Like my friend in a key swing state, Pennsylvania, Vincent Motor, the first man freed on DNA evidence in Philly, Pennsylvania history, has not even received 1 penny of compensation for his almost decade of wrongful incarceration.
Yeah, it's like and I like I said, I was in the legislature for 16 years. I was on our Public Protection Judiciary Committee. I got a disorderly conduct ticket from the Madison police for taking a picture of a sunset on a sailboat. So it's like I realize that our criminal justice system is not always good at catching criminals and not good at providing justice. And I have right now one of my homeless people, it was my crew chief, was arrested on a charge that he molested a child before, when the child wasn't even in town. It's like, and he's African American male, homeless, and part Native American. And his chances of being arrested, in each one of those things is 10 to 15% higher than your typical white housed male.
Yeah.
So,
For people that are triggered, just so you know, black people are arrested at 5 times the rate of white people. So
right. Well, and they're,
yeah.
but Native Americans are arrested at 15 times the rate, and homeless people are arrested, I think, at 11 times the rate. And so you add those three things together, does it multiply or does it add? But basically, I want to say black men are an endangered species in this country. I mean, they should be getting endangered species protection, like the bald eagle, because we need. But this unfair incarceration rate. I was just yesterday. I was sitting in a court proceeding with one of my tenants, Liam, and it was a railroad job. I mean, you could tell from the get go he had. I mean, and I public interveners, public defenders, bless their soul. I mean, they're overworked, they're underpaid, they're understaffed, and I think increasing that staff and funding is one of the first steps to getting, fair justice for everyone. But also you have to deal with the drug and alcohol issues. But looking back as governor, the thing I can do is a probation and parole board. I look back and I see, and you see Trump, pardoning all these scallywags and hardened criminals. I would look at, we've all made mistakes in our lives. Have they, repented, or are they rehabbed? And then, because a lot of people can't even vote because they got a felony conviction, and that's, part of restorative justice is not only letting people off, getting people set free who are innocent, because we are all innocent until proven guilty. And sometimes the proof is pretty thin. Back to your compensation question, what is the value of a life? If you were figuring that number based on, like for a lawsuit, it would be how much, did you earn? How much could you earn? And how much did you not get because you were locked up? Not to mention the whole lifetime of stigma you'll get from that. So I want to run the numbers, but I think it should be a lot more than 50,000. And on top of that, we have to look at who put them there and whether the prosecutors and the officers were doing their job. This case with Liam yesterday, he said that the arresting officer basically threw the book at him. He has a traumatic brain injury, so he can be erratic, but did the officer do his job, and did he make false statements? If he did make false statements, we're going to bring him up on professional misconduct charges. So, and when the word gets out that there's a new sheriff in town, a lot of that stuff will dry up. So,
that's a lot of what we've been struggling with down here. Just so you know, even though there's a new DA who's been elected in, the thing is that the assistant DAs who've been there for several administrations, right? One of them was actually involved with this guy named Nolan Farrell. Actually, he's the one who I'm working with, who's got the letter from the DAs who admitted that things were done wrong in his case. He implicates a guy named John Castellano, who's still working as an assistant DA, but they don't want to take any action against him. This guy has a lot of connections with the. He's been assistant DA for a long time, right? He's very connected with political party leadership, and also he's got teaches at schools, right? He's a instructor, so very connected. So they don't want to touch him. So they're just leaving this guy out to dry because it's quite unfortunate. So I appreciate your words of support. We also have some white people that are involved with wrongful incarcerations, like Jeffrey Ziskovic. He was wrongfully incarcerated. So, but most of the victims are black, which is because the research is really high. But we are for all of them. So
our criminal justice system is is separate and unequal, and as is a lot of our housing, as is a lot of our urban and so we need to address this one step at a time. But the key thing to getting these people is you have to file an ironclad complaint. If you have the evidence, you need to take it for an attorney. You take it to the state bar, and for a police officer, you take it to the internal affairs, and holding them accountable for this stuff, even if they're connected.
You ever hear of a guy called Serpico?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so the thing is that I think 4 years ago, maybe a little bit less, but I actually did a criminal justice reform panel with Serpico's blessing, because there's a guy named Steve Lee who actually caused a reexamination of the Knapp Commission, which was Serpico really kind of got instituted to involve corruption in the police department. So I have I'm not as experienced as yourself, but I have some interesting things that I think that I'm very excited to work with you and put some very cool things together. I see a potential there. So thank you.
And an avalanche begins with one flake that decides to be different. So
let's go. two more partners, then we're going to get to our thing. So another group that I work with is students who have been abused by academic administrators. We know that there's a lot of students right now who are being kicked out for having political stance. One of our former candidates I work with, named Andy Williams, said that we provide federal funds to schools to try to give students degrees, to try to help them with their futures, not to determine their political stance. So, right, if these schools are withdrawing their students, that's just one example. Another student I work with is Corey Edens. I myself I whistleblew on how college administrators were going on trips across the country using student funds, and I was actually retaliated against by academic administrators. So I'm trying to get a meeting between myself and Corey Edens with the CUNY chancellor and also the Hunter College president in a public meeting, so they could talk to us about our questions regarding abuses of administrators on students. Would you support us getting that meeting?
Yeah, first of all, you should look at federal whistleblower protection. So that's where I would start, because that's, once you blow the whistle on something like that, they can't touch you. So that's a fairly robust law that you could use. I actually have the same problem here in Wisconsin. I have a convertible. That's my campaign car. It's a 95 Cutlass Supreme, cherry red, white leather interior convertible. And I signed up for the UW homecoming parade online. And then I went to show up to participate in the homecoming parade. And I was told by a young lady, Amy, that I was not allowed to do so. So first of all, I'm a former UW student. I'm a member of Hoofers. I represented the UW for 4 years in the legislature, continually fighting efforts to cut their funding. But apparently my constitutional rights of neither assembly nor speech apply to a parade in a public road. And there's actually some of the Republicans are making an issue of this here. But I believe in, your academic freedom is protected by the Constitution of the U.S. Constitution and the Constitution of the State of New York. And I would encourage you to become very familiar with that and exercise your constitutional rights to the maximum extent possible and practical. I plan on doing the same. There's a Republican bill. I've got to call some Republicans because they're concerned about free speech on campuses and people negating free speech. I have a little free speech case going on. I parked my sailboat out by the road, and Wisconsin's football coach Luke Fickell is a horrible failure. He won 4 games and lost 8 games this year. So I have this Fire Fickell banner on my sailboat, and the state was trying to make me move it because they were worried about the ice crushing it. Well, it's designed not to be crushed by the ice, and I'm going to go dig it out of the ice later. But I have the constitutional right to both assemble. It's the free speech, and then political free speech is on top of that with additional protections. And under the Wisconsin Constitution, we have the lakes belong to us all. So I am pursuing and educating some government officials about the Constitution that they have sworn to serve. I only swore to serve it 8 times between the legislature and county boards. So, know your I had constitutional.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
I had constitutional law at Middlebury. You can go, by the way, to a law school and get, a lot of times the students will have a student law clinic, and they can provide you a lot of help with this. So.
I'm actually right by the CUNY Law School, so that's great. I will be there.
There you
go. All right. Next question is actually the last partner, not so much a partner, but just a cause I personally support, is something called Right to Repair. I don't know if you've ever heard of this particular concept. I know there's a lot of farmers who have actually been affected by John Deere. Their tractor will break down. Then they have an exclusive contract with John Deere that only John Deere can repair their tractor.
Mm-hmm,
so the thing is, this is also true for McDonald's. That's why the ice cream machine's always broken. It costs like $30,000 to fix it. So the farmer there wants to repair their own vehicle, but they can't do it because John Deere will lock them out, and then they lose their harvest and all that. John Deere doesn't have any incentive to make sure that someone goes out right away. They're locked into a contract.
Right.
You see that with phones, right? Nowadays, phones, there's a lot of, you can't get your phone serviced anywhere, right? I think that this fight for right to repair was done previously with cars. That's why you can go to any place and get your oil changed. So right to repair, maybe we spend more time learning about it, but would you support, there's a lot of ideas of, now they're trying to move all the software to subscription models where you have less ownership of your things.
Right.
Would you support right to repair? Maybe you got to learn more about it, but have you heard about this? No?
I've actually heard it indirectly. So just so you know, I grew up working on my family's farm, and I drove tractors since I was 9 years old. So, and of course we had old tractors. We couldn't afford it.
How high tech they are now, though. Those things are insane.
They are crazy insane, and frankly, a lot of farmers are mortgaging their futures, especially with the crazy Trump-Vance ag policies now. They just had to, Trump just bailed out the farmers for $12 billion of money that he took away from them because he screwed up the trade war.
He did. At least I'm glad he did actually bail them out. I mean, because the thing is, they were going to be left holding the bag.
I am glad he bailed them out, but this was a disaster created by Trump. He filled in the hole. He filled in the hole that he had dug out himself because he doesn't understand international trade. And I worked with both the Wisconsin corn growers on promoting advanced biofuel plants to get more feed out of the corn to send to people in Africa and clean biofuel here. And I also worked with the soybean growers in Wisconsin on getting a press plant so we could add value to our soybeans rather than exporting raw commodities. So I've worked on every farm bill since 1985, and I was President Clinton's agricultural and environmental advisor. So I'm, I know farm policy pretty well. This process that you talk about here it's sort of the agribusiness industrial complex. There is motivation both between the bankers and the implement dealers to sell every farmer the latest whiz bang. And I've been in these GPS things. They're great. I mean, when I was on my farm, I didn't even have an umbrella on the thing. I was out, my shirt off on the tractor, baking like a chicken in the Oklahoma sun, and I'm getting the cancer, things taken off my back because of that. So and by the way, folks, wear a shirt and a hat when you're doing this, long sleeve shirt and hat. So don't let that happen to you. But and a lot of farmers are wising up that, this is not, they can make, 90, one of the things we have to remember about U.S. commodity production, especially corn, soybeans, and to a lesser extent wheat, which we raised on our farm in Oklahoma, and we had 3 farms. So, is that the incentives are in place to overproduce. And the more we overproduce, the lower the price goes. And then you got to stick in, the basis prices, the federal government prices kick in to keep the prices up. What the Everything I've worked on since the 1985 Farm Bill, I have helped create the Conservation Reserve Program that's conserved more than 30 million acres of highly erodible land. And this was with the leader here was honestly Congressman Glenn English, who was a Democrat from Northwest Oklahoma and chair of the Ag Committee. So, I mean, he was the leader. I was on the Wildlife Federation board. We're supporting his efforts. So it's good to, give credit where credit's due. So then we created the Wetland Reserve Program, which preserves wetlands. We need to expand that program because a lot of farmers are seeing these lowland areas flooded continually. And we can actually pay the farmer for flood storage, water quality, and wildlife habitat. So Wetland Reserve Program pay them about $1,000 an acre to restore wetlands. We need, in order with climate change and increasing our upstream flood potential, wetlands are the easiest way and most cost-effective way to do that. Then we need, conservation, CSP. There's a whole EQIP. There's a whole bunch of acronyms, but we need to move money from subsidizing the commodities to promoting giving farmers more crops. In Wisconsin, we want to add, marijuana and hemp. So giving them also a diversified stream outside of the big three commodity crops.
So, quick question, right? Yeah. The thing is that what you said makes a lot of sense, right? And I find this true in so many different fields of activism. So, for example, your wetland solution, right? That's a natural solution. But the thing is that there's going to be a lot of other people, like I think this happens also with the environmental thing, like with windmills and stuff, right? There's a lot of companies that want to build their infrastructure, right? Or like solar panels. Sometimes it can go way overboard where the industry will try to fight against the wetlands because they want to put in like some kind of like a water treatment plant because they're going to make a lot of money by doing that. So they sell a solution versus allowing nature to actually, or work with nature to be a solution. But the thing is that nature isn't paying for lobbyists. So how does the wetlands win? How can that solution
two ways to get around that. So back to our example of the Mississippi River floods. Killed 80 million people. It was 18 million gallons of million acre feet of flood water. We needed roughly 9 billion acre feet. We need 9 billion acre foot of flood storage. And that price would have cost half what the flood did, in addition to setting us up for future mitigation on future floods. Excuse me. I'm still getting over this pneumonia. But so back to the example, the first place we start is crop insurance reform. Crop insurance pays farmers to keep growing on wetlands. And we did this with FEMA, so that was there was one house down in Houston that the Wildlife Federation found that had been flooded like 30 times and a house that was continually rebuilt in a floodplain. We give you 2 or 3 strikes and you're out. Once you get 2 flood insurance claims, crop insurance claims, we buy that land from you. We help you restore it to wetlands. We can also grow switchgrass there, which actually can be burned with coal to reduce carbon pollution and soot pollution, save lives. And I worked with Alliant Energy and Madison Gas and Electric here on doing that on a conversion plant in Nelson Dewey on the Mississippi River in Cassville. So we can get multiple benefits, and then we return to the farmer those. I'm happy to pay farmers, but I want to pay them to produce clean water, clean air, conservation, habitat, flood storage, not just more commodities. So
I appreciate that. Yeah. So now I've asked the questions for all my partners. Do you have any particular policy that you want to speak about yourself?
Um, let's start with, can we solve global warming now? So that's okay.
It's
So
definitely
my
happening.
yeah, global warming, and I call it extreme weather chaos. All you got to do is, the floods going on. My friend Dave Summers is a county executive out in Snohomish County. I served with him on the National Association of Counties Environment Committee. He is dealing with a lot of the floods north of Seattle. But what we have to reduce carbon pollution for two reasons. The most important reason is carbon pollution kills millions of people a year from air pollution, asthma, heart attacks, and strokes. Soot pollution. If you've ever been behind a diesel truck, you see that black junk coming out. That is fine particulate matter, which is a deadly killer. It's one of the things that kills people in cigarettes. So that is a compelling public purpose. I think it's something like 6 million premature deaths a year, but don't quote me on that. The second reason, obviously, is the extreme weather chaos that we're seeing. Floods, hurricanes. Latest hurricane had 250-mile-an-hour winds. And I used to fix up sailboats. I had one sailboat by West Palm Beach in Florida, one by Galveston. And there were hurricanes bearing down on both boats at the same time. That's when I figured that was not a good business model. But hurricanes, extreme rain events like we're seeing in the Pacific Northwest, and droughts, and even the killer cold we've been having is part of this climate chaos. So the McKinsey report, I don't know if McKinsey is a popular think tank, but what they show is we can get halfway to achieving our climate goals with just stuff that saves money. So after college, I went out to Colorado, Western Colorado, and helped build a house for Amory Lovins, who's an energy expert. And that house kicks in 18,000 watts a day of energy back into the grid. And it's done that since 1984, so over 40 years. I was a stonemason on it, and they made me assistant foreman helping build it. The energy improvements of that house pay for themselves in less than a year, which means those are 100% rate of return. And so what I want to do is, this is not you've heard of net zero houses that use zero energy. This is a net positive house that kicks energy back into the grid. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I want to make every government building in the state of Wisconsin, 12,000 schools, businesses, and government buildings, at least net energy zero, and preferably net positive by 2030. This is going to be an Apollo program and it involves typically solar panels on the roof, heat pumps, insulation, energy efficient lighting. This is going to put thousands of people to work in the trades, union carpenters, operating engineers, plumbers, electricians, uh, and it's going to be one of the biggest public works. And the way you pay for this, by the way, is at the state. I borrow money at 4% interest. I I borrow the money. I fund these projects, and then the companies and local units of government pay the state back with their energy savings in the future. It's called performance contracting. Johnson Controls, which is a great Wisconsin company, does it all over the world. So, and
I
that
think that
would,
really, with your background and your qualifications, having prominently worked with the Sierra Club, having worked at like not just the state and county level, but also at a federal level with presidents and being in the war room and all this other thing, I think that you are particularly suited to actually get federal funds to try to help you with this program. I think Trump is going to get beat up in the next election we're going to see, but I think you have a very good possibility of more than the other candidates. Are you actually?
but honestly,
Yeah.
I don't want federal money. I want to
Okay.
do this. There's federal money is too slow, too bureaucratic and too unreliable. I want to do this with just state money. And we'll use federal incentives or tax incentives for solar as needed, but there's too much paperwork and bullshit, honestly. We have to move fast here. We got to move like an X-wing fighter in Star Wars. And to do that, we need state and local involved. You know, our money is just so much quicker and easier than federal money. So, but go ahead.
I haven't been able to keep on top of the environmental stuff. I know like there's also some type of like credits that the UN might be giving, but I think that the US is kind of withdrawing from UN stuff, but they might get more involved. But they had those they withdrew from the carbon accords or something, right?
Yeah, we pulled out of all stuff. And again, a bunch of states, our Governor Evers and others went to the recent climate summit in South America. I couldn't go because I have my grandchildren on Sundays. So, you can only,
That's fine.
you could go
Can't be everywhere.
protecting your grandchildren, or you can go have fun with your grandchildren. I'd rather do that. But so the key thing on carbon though is, so I formed a company that worked in West Africa with a couple of Nigerians. And our business model was in southern Nigeria, there's a huge natural gas production area. You can see it from space at night because they burn the natural gas. We wanted to put cleaners and catchers in place, capture that natural gas, clean it up and bottle it, and ship it. There's enough natural gas there to power and cook all the cooking in all of Africa. So, and there's a huge indoor air pollution problem there. They're burning wood inside these huts. Hundreds of thousands of people die from that every year, and they're deforesting. So this process would have caught 3 fish with basically, you would have cleaned up the pollution from the oil field. You would have helped African families feed themselves and save the rainforest and reduce carbon pollution. So we were all ready to go to this, and the knuckleheads in Congress canceled the Import-Export Bank. The Import-Export Bank guarantees that when our equipment gets to Nigeria, we get paid for it. And I don't know about you, but I have a Nigerian princess who loves me. She said so on Facebook. And actually, she's beautiful. Actually, her name's Mbet.
And you won the lotto too, right?
Well, no, I haven't done that yet. But it's like but I did send her $550 to buy a sewing machine, and she's making some beautiful dresses with it. So I look forward to going to Nigeria and meeting her. But we have to have the Import-Export Bank in place. But I could actually do this project from Wisconsin. We could build the equipment in Wisconsin. We could ship it there as governor, and we could make this happen. And since USAID's gone, the thing that working in Africa taught me though is China is kicking our ass. China is over there building schools, building roads, building sewage treatment plants. They are building so much goodwill. And honestly, our efforts are just making enemies. So
also, just so you know, this is also happening in the Caribbean. I spent about 3 years on the island of Grenada. They built a whole entire China built a stadium there. If you go to the national parks, you will see pagodas and stuff around. The obvious influence from China's, in the Caribbean, not even Africa.
Yeah, and they're going to have when they're our number one threat right now. And I don't think people in America understand the depth of power that they've built all over the world just by their goodwill. And, the Trump administration is busy blowing up fishing vessels off of Venezuela and stealing oil from oil refineries. And that sends a clear message to everyone in South America that the U.S. is a bunch of bullies and can't be trusted. We need to have a good neighbor policy, where we treat everybody in the hemisphere with respect. And para mí, es solamente canadiense para el gobierno de Wisconsin que habla español. And para mí, amigos hispánicos, bienvenidos a Wisconsin. and gracias para tu trabajo. So we have to be able to speak their language to communicate that we want to be good neighbors. And instead of blowing up, our military should be down helping. Actually, our National Guard should be over in Washington helping with those floods instead of invading Chicago and other cities. So,
I appreciate you answering that, right? So, once again, you are actually, with your experiences, no two people will agree on all priors of positions.
yeah.
But once again, your experience and your knowledge is really top notch as in terms of this project. I'm just so excited to have you on. How can people find out more about? I know you have a website. I know it's kind of like under transition. I might try to help you with that, honestly.
Yeah,
But what? Yeah.
I'm looking for a fifth grader to help update the website that was created by the third grader. So it's like and
I'll officially do
Liam,
that right now. I will do that.
Liam, my assistant, has been helping with the website some. But
Okay.
yeah, it's my message is very simple. Don't fret. Vote for Brett.org. It's vote the number 4 Brett BRETT.org. And that's the message that's on top of my convertible. I had to put my convertible away because it was 20 below here last week. But I've got to get my publicity on the side of my van. I call it the van down by the river that but when I ran before, like I said, I spent $7,044. I got 51,300 votes. This time I've got about 50,000 in the bank. I'm willing to spend, and it's an open seat. Probably about 400,000. The Republicans set this time for the election on August 11th when people are on vacation and students weren't in school. So they're trying to, minimize public participation. But if I just apply the basic math, I'll get 360,000 out of 400,000 votes, which would be, that'd be 90%. That'd be good.
Are you a front runner for this race? Are you the expected?
So the funny thing is in the polls, which, and again, I've run campaigns all over America. The interesting thing about the polls is typically 40% of the people make up their final mind in the last 3 days. So polls this early, I'm not last, but I'm not first. But it doesn't matter because all across the state, I've worked with people since 1988 when I moved up here. And, I have, you may have gathered, I'm not your typical slick politician candidate. I'm just kind of a regular guy. But
You're definitely a contender. When I looked at I think a local press had done affiliated with national media had done an interview with you. They put you near the center of of all the list of candidates. I think
right.
You're definitely not like a fringe candidate. You're definitely you've won before. You know what winning looks like. You know how to how to be in a campaign. You come with the better set of qualifications and skill set than most of our candidates. I'm very excited. I think you have one of the best chances. And from a swing state, wow.
The thing to remember about Wisconsin is whoever wins Wisconsin wins the presidency. And I've that's one of the things when I'm looking at all these presidential candidates. I haven't seen anybody out there that can win Wisconsin, and that concerns me because that's President Clinton's deputy political director. One of the reasons I got that job is I was from Wisconsin, and I helped deliver Wisconsin. So it's like, but we'll see. We still got, a lot of time, but yeah. So my campaign, right today is talking to you, and then I got to go do some real work. I am going to be handing out. I don't have copies in front of me, but I'll send it to you. I'm going to be handing out checks tomorrow with my Santa hat on for $3 billion because to the citizens, students, teachers, public servants of Wisconsin. That's the money that former Republican Governor Scott Walker and current Republican frontrunner Tom Tiffany took away from them when they said the state was broke in 2010 and 11. So I will, and I have promised, if elected, to restore that money in my first budget, and to restore worker rights so that people can bargain for a fair contract and a safe workplace. So, and again, I debated the bill. It was called Act 10. I call it the Walker Unfair to Spare Act, for 62 hours. So I'm very familiar with that. So that's but I handed about 30,000 of these checks out when I ran before in 2014, and people come up to me on the street saying their check is still on their refrigerator. So, and I said, well, here's the update. You get to adjust that for inflation. So that's
that you kind of already took the next question out of my mouth. I was going to ask, now that they have information, don't fret, vote for Brett. The number 4.
voteforbrett.org.
Yeah.
And
what do they have to look forward to? So you just said tomorrow there's that event where you're giving out the checks, stuff like that. Anything else? Any other fundraisers? Anything else coming up? Any other?
Like I said, I have enough cash to fund my own campaign. I like being my own campaign. People, I just got a check in the mail the other day. If people, my address is on there. I've got an Act Blue, and stuff like that. But what I focus on is same thing I do in my bit. I don't market for my business, Better Environmental Solutions, because I'm too busy right now. I market by word of mouth and producing a quality product. If somebody's running a lot of ads on TV, it typically means they don't have a quality product. So I don't save a lot. I do produce my own ads on my iPhone. I'll run some targeted ads, but I don't,
Yeah.
My goal is
efficient campaign. You know how to win, right? Style. It's not style over substance for you. You're actually more of and that's exactly the type of candidate that I'm looking for. So I'm really honored to meet you. Once again, you are not trying to just gas you up. You can see all the other candidates interviews I do. I don't really say this to them, right? Once again, you are the most highly anticipated candidate that I've had in the entire history of this. I've had over 60, 70 interviews all over the nation.
Well, enjoyed talking to you. Yeah, I got to get over and get this.
Thank you so much.
Fix this molder mediation today, and then I got to go take this lady whose air conditioner is the ice dam's about to fall on her air conditioner. So that's.
I'm gonna send you an email, and I do want to actually help you get your website looking nicer. So if I can help you with that, I definitely will. So
I'll copy you on Liam. He's my website guy, and you guys can talk, and that would be great. So yeah, there's no place to go but up. But I did produce a Christmas card. I'll send you my Christmas card that has me with every president back to Clinton, Democratic, and Senator John Glenn, the great astronaut, and a bunch of and me and Willie Nelson, of course. But I'm still trying to find the pictures of me and Carter. But that's it's like but yeah, it's
I appreciate it, sir. It's been I feel truly blessed for this. This is actually one of the most
this has been fun, and thanks for putting me through my paces. You were You're like the laxative. You were gentle but thorough, so I appreciate that.
Oh my goodness. Well, I gotta make it flow, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, you gotta. Us old guys, we're just trying to stay regular guys here. So
thank you so much, Brett. I really appreciate it.
Okay, good to talk to you. Have a great day. And if you get a chance, go see my daughter's play. It's like $40 tickets. It's the Divine Dating Game. So it's.
Send me the information. I will look into it. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
It's a dark day in our nation when high-level authorities will seek to use every method to silence dissent. The truth must be told.
And if you want the truth, you need to check out independent media producers just like myself, DJ L7. You should subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notifications when I release a new video.
Truth of these
we
words
are on all
is
the
beyond
major platforms.
doubt.
That includes Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course YouTube. Unfortunately, we have definitely seen that these mainstream outlets will cave to corporate interests, so we encourage you to join our independently moderated communities of Reddit and Discord. We also encourage you to subscribe to us on BitChute and Daily Motion so you can see the content that YouTube doesn't want us to let you see. Hey, now it's time for the most important part of the video. That's right. It's time for us to tell you about the Taking Action group. Do you need an activist? or maybe there's no activists around willing to help you with your cause and you need to learn to become an activist. That's exactly why we're here. Every week we get up with people from across the nation, in fact even sometimes internationally, and we develop strategies and a game plan to address the issues that are affecting all of us. Every week myself from New York City and of course my co-host Lisa from Los Angeles provide a coast-to-coast perspective on what's going on in the country. If you want to donate to help out with expenses, travel, equipment, stuff like that, then I definitely appreciate it, and you can hit us off at Venmo or PayPal. Thanks a lot. Hey, by the way, we also have a merch store, so check it out. Oh my goodness, it seems like you've reached the end of the video, so make sure you check out some of our other videos. Make sure you subscribe. This is your last chance to do so thanks a lot. And looking forward to seeing you on the next one. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please comment below if you have any questions or issues you'd like me to address. And if you're an activist, the time to make things happen is now.